Get ready to dive deep into Buffalo's vibrant music scene because we're stepping inside the fabulous Flamingo Lounge for the 9th season of local music magic. In the Flamingo Lounge with Rockabilly Greg is more than just a podcast. It's a collection of stories that dives deep into the vibrant music history of Buffalo and Western New York, creating a living archive where each story adds a unique thread to the overall narrative. This season, we're taking a deep dive into the heart of the music community. Join us for personal conversations with musicians and industry pros where we celebrate the collective creativity that makes our favorite artists, venues, and events so special. But before we get started, I'd like to give a big shout out to our sponsors, CatsLikeUs.com, Diamond Hawk Golf Course and Pub, and valued supporter Buffalo Ironworks for helping to keep the music alive. Richie English is a nationally recognized composer, pianist, arranger, and producer. He has worked on several Billboard-charting albums by artists including the Goo Goo Dolls, Michael Franti, and Moody Blues founder Denny Laine is orchestral composer and co-writer. English was the youngest registered piano teacher in New York State at 11 years old, studying under Juilliard-trained pianists Frieda and Stephen Maines. He graduated from SUNY Buffalo with a piano performance degree and a master's in music theory. In 2006, English performed 2 recital programs for the Dalai Lama during his visit to UB. With co-host Stratton Rawson, English can be heard on Fridays at 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. on WNED Classical's Stratton and Richie, Entering Music. Listeners can also catch English solo on Wednesday nights at 10 p.m. on From the Piano Bench. Download the WNED app or tune in to 94.5 FM radio. It is my honor to welcome to the Flamingo Lounge, Richie English.
Hi, Greg. Thank you so much for having me, and hello to all our listeners. It's great to be here. I wish that all of you could see the inside of this lounge, just how colorful it is and eclectic. Yeah, to say the least.
There's not much free space left, but I'm finding ways to fit more stuff in down here. So, well, thanks for coming down, Richie. I know we had your brother on, Josh, not too long ago, and he says, "Man, you got to get Richie to come down." I said, "That's a great idea. I've seen you perform, and I know you've done some great stuff around town. So, but before we get into all that, and of course, man, your bio that I read, you've done some great stuff that I want to talk about, but." As always, I like to start the show by asking everyone, did you have an aha moment when you said music's what I want to do?
I did. I had 2 aha moments for 2 different facets of my career. The first aha moment that I had was as a composer, and it was when I heard the score for 1989 Batman.
Ah, right, yeah.
By Danny Elfman.
Danny Elfman, yeah.
Who I met, by the way, this weekend backstage with Joanne.
Okay, yeah.
It was all I could do to keep from fainting. He's my hero. I love Danny Elfman.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing that when I was 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it went through me like an electric bolt.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, this is where I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard, when I was 13, I heard the song Go Now by the Moody Blues.
Mm-hmm.
Denny Laine cranks that one out. And the very next day I said to myself, I can do this.
Right.
And I wrote my first song.
Wow.
At the piano. And
13.
it was... music and lyrics, and so it took Danny Elfman to sort of establish the vision of where I wanted the type of writing to go, but it took Denny Laine to ignite the spark that got me to sit down at the piano and actually plunk something out of my own.
Right. Well, even according to what I read, though, you're already teaching piano though at that point, right? At 11 years old.
Yes, yeah. I picked up piano very quickly. I remember looking at a piano when I was a child and just thinking to myself, this makes sense to me. Like just looking at the layout and seeing the geometry of the whole thing. I remember thinking, I understand, I think what's going on here. And I started playing by ear very quickly. Everything started happening, when I was about 7 years old.
Wow.
Just anything that I heard,
Right.
I would go and sort of replicate my own way. And my music teacher at Hoover Elementary School, Mr. Mastolinsky, took notice of this when I was in 4th grade, and he asked my mom who my piano teacher was, and she said, "What? He doesn't have a teacher." And he was so outraged by this,
Right.
that he hooked us up with Frieda.
Okay.
And you had to audition for lessons from Mrs. Manis, because she only took intermediate to advanced students, and I was nothing like that. I couldn't read music.
Right.
I played with 6 fingers, but I had like a steel trap ear, and she was the one that discerned that I had absolute pitch. I remember she told me to go to the other end of the room, and she started plunking out notes and asking me to name them.
Right.
So she said, "I'll take him, but it's going to be the hardest thing that he's ever done in his life. I have to completely retrain him from the ground up." And he seems like he's very stubborn. And I was a very stubborn piano student.
Right.
And that was when I was about 10 years old, I think. But all my friends played ice hockey.
Right.
And I wanted to fit in. And my mom was already shelling out a lot of money for these piano lessons. And so I asked her, "Hey, Mom, can I play ice hockey?" And she said, "Sure, you can play ice hockey, but you have to foot the bill." So instead of wanting to mow lawns or, rake or anything like that, I just remember calculating how many lawns it would be and how much ice hockey would cost, and thinking this is not feasible. And so I thought, I'll start teaching piano lessons to my friends.
Right.
And I got a couple students, from my class. And then this weird thing happened where their parents and older people started wanting to take lessons.
Right.
And I eventually had something close to a full studio. And I didn't think that anything of this. I didn't think that it was special. I just did it to pay for ice hockey. And the Buffalo News thought differently. They came in knocking. And one day they walked in and, quite unexpected.
Right.
And they did a big story on this. I didn't realize that this was like a very special thing. And I was registered for discounts at a store called Denton Couture and Daniels.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was registered. I had the teacher's discount for it, and they informed me you're the youngest that there is. And they did a big story. It was called Keeper of the Keys, and that kind of began my teaching career. Right. I'm 41 now. Right. And it had taken off, at a very young age. Wow. But I wasn't yet composing, which is where I view my musical life sort of lies. I got very proficient on piano very quick, and I'm a classical pianist. Okay. That's what Mrs. Manis trained me to be, and that's what I went to school for. Right. I studied with her husband in college, and by then I was, I would say, formidable. I was playing repertoire that was very, very challenging. I was blessed to win, a number of scholarships to study, and classical music was my first love. And I think that was kind of born out of hearing Danny Elfman. It just stuck in me. When you compare his music to like the greats, it holds up. It sounds like a modern day Wagner or something. And that's where my heart has sort of always lain. Yeah. Yeah. That Batman movie was something. I remember when it came out. I'm an old comic book guy, and like when I was a kid, Batman was lame. And man, when that movie came out, it was like, this is really cool. And of course, I remember Danny Elfman from Oingo Boingo. Oh, I love Oingo Boingo. Because that was the thing when I was in college. Oingo Boingo was all the rage. What a voice. Oh, gosh, yes. Yeah. He's just such a versatile talent. I can't say enough about him. I was obsessed with Oingo Boingo when I was in college. Dead Man's Party, Weird Science.
Yeah.
All of there's so many of them.
Yeah.
Goodbye. And just listening to Danny Elfman's operatic voice, coming out of and to realize that he wrote all of that music.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
and then switches to like Pee-wee's Playhouse and Beetlejuice and all the Tim Burton movies.
Right.
So he, very early on, he kind of showed me that you could do it all, and he was untrained.
Right. Yeah. It's
good Lord.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's like you have it or you don't, whether you're trained or not, right?
Yes.
I mean, some people just pick it up, and it's like you said, it makes sense to you, and it's a second language. And other people, they have to work for it, but can get there just as much. But it doesn't, just because you're not like this natural, gifted person, you can still pick it up. And
well, that's interesting that you say that, because Beethoven was one of those people. He was a late bloomer.
Right.
At first he was terrible. His father tried to whip him into shape, and make a Mozart out of him,
right.
This glorious child prodigy who was like a scientific aberration and, who was touring the continent, and Beethoven just that's not what he was. So his father beat him mercilessly.
Right. Wow.
And instead of hating music, he wound up seizing it like it was, the only thing in his life. And then by the time he was in his early 20s, he had forced himself by sheer will to become like the most formidable composer that there was on the continent.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's always that parental debate. Do you push your kids? Do you not push the kids? If they want to do it? If they don't want to do it, do you make them do it? Because down the road they're going to say thanks for making me do that. And you always get 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, as far as an answer from somebody. It's like, I wish my mom never would have made me do that. And boy, I'm so happy my mom pushed me.
Oh, for sure. There was a day that came, when I was a teenager, where I said, I quit.
Yeah.
That's it, because Mrs. Manis was just, really coming down hard on me.
Right.
And my mom said, no, you're not quitting. It's not an option in your life. You're seeing this through.
Right.
And I do. I'm one of those people that thanks God for it, because I had an impulsive moment that would have like sidelined everything that's happened since. And it was my mother that had the foresight to just, to put her foot down. And she was also donating her rare blood type every week to fund these piano lessons.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
everybody else had these bumper stickers that said, give blood, play hockey. And I remember thinking to myself, like, my mom is the real thing here.
Right.
So I'm very thankful to her for not allowing me to step out.
Wow, that's awesome. That's a wild thing. God bless moms. I mean,
amen.
There's always moms, dads. They always are right there. Sometimes very under the radar, but helping you along and giving you that push that you need. Because we all know as kids, you'd rather be out, riding bikes and playing hockey or street hockey, whatever. Yeah, it's just
That's exactly what I wanted to do.
Instead of playing. But now I'm sure though, when you were in school, everyone's like, piano man, can you play piano man? And, all that kind of stuff.
I still get that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. When I was the artistic director and the house pianist for a place called the Bittersweet Piano Lounge, which was out of Hotel Lafayette.
Right.
This was a few years back. Beautiful place. It was run by a guy named Gino Drake, just a great guy. And people used to request Piano Man all the time, and it got to the point where I would charge them. I think it was like $50 if they wanted to hear Piano Man. It was some exorbitant fee.
Right. It's kind of your version of Freebird, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just, there's always one in the crowd that wants to hear it.
Yeah.
And it's a great song. It is. I'm not going to decry it, but it gets to the point where it's like, it's also not easy to sing.
Right.
And, I give Billy Joel a lot of credit.
Yeah, it's a rangy song
for that. It really is.
Yeah.
To pull that off is and make it convincing.
Yeah.
Is a big deal. And as a classical pianist, I think of every piece of music that I'm playing in terms of like a linear journey.
Right.
I don't think of it just as like, okay, there's this verse and then a bunch of drunk people are going to sing us a song, You're the Piano Man.
Right.
That's not how it happens for me.
Right.
I take it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and of course, have you ever played any of Billy's classical stuff that he's written? Or
no, I haven't. It's it was a little difficult for me to find the sheet music.
Oh, okay.
It's wonderful though.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an elitist about this. There are these people that think that if you come from the rock world, you have no business operating in the classical world.
Right.
Well, I mean, tell that to Danny Elfman, tell that to Billy Joel.
Yeah.
Tell that to Elton John.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And all these people Billy Joel has a real command of a lot of the different classical composers' styles because he's got a great ear.
Right.
And Paul McCartney is another one, but I remember when he wrote that album Standing Stone, which was like his first foray into proper classical music, and it just got ripped to shreds.
Right.
And it was great.
Mm-hmm.
It was wonderful. But, he needed an orchestrator to help him with his ideas. Well, so did the composer Franz Liszt, the great Franz Liszt,
right.
who's like the king of pianists. When he first got into orchestral music, he needed somebody to help him too.
Sure.
We all need a little help now and then. So it's just, it's interesting you brought up the Billy Joel classical stuff because it's so, you can't really hear his style in it at all.
Right.
It sounds absolutely convincing,
Mm-hmm.
like it was written in the Impressionistic period or something.
Yeah. It's amazing how those guys can do that. And of course, I've said it many, many times. You mentioned Franz Liszt. I mean, my mind goes right to a Bugs Bunny cartoon where they were doing kind of like
Rhapsody.
a Fantasia thing with Liszt. But they had all those great classical pieces in those cartoons, and as a young child, that just kind of seeped into me. I didn't know what it was, but it was there because we were watching Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Those guys who write that music for those shows are absolutely astounding composers.
Right.
I can't emphasize it enough. And it was a lot of people's first exposure to the great music.
Right.
That Fantasia, of course.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people's first exposure to a piece like Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring, which was like this violent, revolutionary piece of music. It came from Fantasia and came from Disney and came from, Looney Tunes and came from the movies.
Right.
And these people are just unbelievably skilled craftsmen. It's fascinating. It's not the same today.
No, it's not. Yeah. It's, I often, my kids grew up in the 90s. So, Rugrats and that kind of stuff. And, it was fun stuff, but it wasn't that, and I always say, I've mentioned it 1,000 times in here. My favorite was, Shorty Rogers' short, the Three Little Bops, where they're doing the Big Bad Wolf thing, and he's like, and they're having a little jazz combo, and the Big Bad Wolf, he learned the rule: you got to play hot if you want to be cool. Got a guy on the piano, one of the pigs is on the piano, and I mean, it's
versatile.
Yeah, it's so great, and I've told everyone I'd love to have a combo in town do that piece. I said, and I'll sing the lead. I'll be Stan Freberg. So, but it's just such. The music, though, was just something. It just gets into you, with the visuals too. I mean, I'm a trained graphic designer, so for me, the visuals and everything, it all just comes together. It's like, wow, it just makes such a. You think about those things without the music. You think about Batman without that music, and it wouldn't be the
unthinkable.
Same.
Yeah, Richard Wagner had a word for this in German. It's called Gesamtkunstwerk. It means total work of art, where everything is integrated. For him, it was in opera. It was the sound design of the theater. It was the music, of course. It was the text. It was the costume design. It was the stage design. It was the lighting.
Right.
Any of the elements left out equaled not his piece.
Right. Yeah. The sum of the whole, right?
Exactly. So as a graphic designer, I'm sure you have a heightened appreciation for that.
Yeah. 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 When you look at all that stuff together, and I had have a friend of mine who does horror movies in town. His name's Greg Lamberson. We went to high school together, and I had him down to talk about how he does in local musicians, Armand Petrie and Joe Rosler.
I work with Armand.
Put all those things together
all the time.
Yeah,
I can't say enough about Armand.
Mm-hmm.
Armand is one of my favorite people. We've done so much work together.
Right,
and he showed me a lot of the music behind those films.
Okay.
So which was fantastic and a throwback. And you could just tell how much fun these guys were having.
Yeah.
Doing this.
Yeah. I keep telling him, I said, man, you got to put that stuff on vinyl, man. I said, I got to get a copy. He's like, someday, but hopefully he will, because it's such great stuff.
It is. I would get that vinyl too.
Yeah. Now I'm going to kind of go backwards. So I know, when we had Josh down here, he said you and your dad played together when you guys were younger.
We did.
So how did that come about?
Well, my father is an amazing blues guitarist. And I think Josh had mentioned on the show that I had bought a drum set and I had gotten proficient, but I wasn't like a virtuoso or anything like that. Certainly nothing like what he's become. And he took it over and started to learn. I was fortunate to introduce him to my then current composition teacher. His name was Tony Miranda, and he was a professor at UB, just one of the best percussionists ever. And I told him about my brother, and one thing led to another, and he took him on as a student, and that's when my brother really started excelling. Meanwhile, my dad, recognized this, and also I got an interest in playing bass. So he heard that I had this interest in bass and took me to Guitar Center, and we immediately got a basic. Oh no, it wasn't basic. It was a Paul McCartney.
A Hofner bass?
It was a knockoff.
Okay, yeah.
But it was like a viola.
Okay.
It had that real light action. I played it with a pick. I still do that. And he got a big amp, and he decided we're going to form a power trio. Let's just jam. Let's just go downstairs and see what happens. And lo and behold, like all three of us, found that we were really good at improvising. And now granted, like we had grown up on Cream.
Right. Okay.
Because my father is just like an acolyte of Eric Clapton.
Right.
Utter a bad word about Clapton in the house,
right?
And you were looking at some
right. So it says Clapton is God right on the front stoop, right?
Yeah, essentially. He's certainly a demigod for and my dad. I remember he got really upset because I took a big interest in David Bowie, especially the glam rock period, and he drove me to Media Play, and I got this David Bowie CD, and he was like so outraged by this that he made me take it back and get a live Cream.
Oh, okay.
And my mom found out that he had done this and like made him buy me the Bowie album back.
Oh, there you go.
So I got two
there
for
you go,
one.
Mom. All right.
But we grew up on listening to power trios. We grew up on listening to Led Zeppelin. Like John Bonham was like the formative influence for my brother.
Yeah.
And Paul McCartney is without question my favorite bassist. And I also play a lot of Bach. And he's probably the greatest. In terms of conceiving a bass line, you can't get much better than Bach.
Right.
And so I thought really linearly already, and so bass kind of came natural to me. and we just started improvising. We called ourselves Plain English. And we started playing, just for fun,
Right.
coffee houses, and we, would play Merlins.
Mm-hmm.
That was always interesting because my brother was like very young when this was happening. And if anyone remembers Merlins, like Merlins could get rough. And, he was just like in this different universe, but he was already like a hotshot drummer. I mean, he was really good like in his early teens.
Okay.
And we just really enjoyed playing together.
Right.
It just came naturally. I don't really know how that happened in terms of like the synergy, but we could just sort of read each other's minds.
Yeah. I think when certain musicians get together, there is this, it's another language. I mean, you're speaking where everyone else knows what you're, it's like, I might not understand German, but other folks are like, yeah, they get around it. And people that really have the music, they just start, because it absolutely is, to me, awe-inspiring to see guys get together. We're going to get together tonight. And they're like, and you'll see the bass player watching the guitar player and the drummer watching everyone. Okay, who's playing what? And they sound like they've played together forever.
Yeah.
That's just, to me, that's
like
impressive.
Watching like a pickup band do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is, but it is a functional language. So I got my master's in music theory, which is of course the studying of the inner workings of music. And music is a functional language. It has syntax, it has an alphabet. It has sentential structure. There are pauses for breath. All the things that a language has. And the thing about music is, if a person, you get these questions asked sometimes, what is music? These sort of very metaphysical questions, and people have a hard time answering it, but there is an answer, like at least about what music is about. And music is about relationships. It's not about like a single chord. It's not about a single note. It's about what happens before that note or that chord and what happens after that note and that chord. The relationship between pitches. That's where you start getting into music.
Right.
And I remember I heard that from my professor, and it just like, it's one of those things where you can't unring the bell.
Right.
Like I'll never think about it in a different way.
You can even read, poetry and reading prose and stuff. There's a certain rhythm and style to that too that's really kind of musical in a lot of ways. It uses the same kind of, da 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 da, da 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 da. You can have, and you can pick up patterns and rhythms and just the phrasing of something that's very well written.
Yeah, you hear that a lot in Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And I love reading the plays of Shakespeare, and I think part of it is for that reason. It's just because of like, the rhythmic undercurrent that takes place in his prose. Yeah. You don't even have to really look for it. It just presents itself on the page. Yeah. So there's a big parallel between the two. And again, that's even more evidence that music is a functional language. It's parallel workings, to poetry.
Right. Now, working with your dad and your brother, did that kind of like inspire you to compose at that point, or did you start composing a little later, or?
By then I was deep into composition.
Okay.
We always just improvised.
Right.
Dad would take a riff, that existed already, like, Peter Gunn or something like that.
Right. Okay.
And we would just, for 20 minutes,
wow,
improvise on that. So there was really no need for me to like compose for them. I always thought that I would, but it never came to fruition. But by then I was like deep into songwriting and classical composition, but I was kind of woodshedding.
Right. Okay.
And I was just writing, piece after piece after piece. I was like learning how to orchestrate all of it with the goal of kind of, being this serious classical composer.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about that is that if you're going to be a serious classical composer these days,
Mm-hmm.
you have to write this kind of spiky, thorny music.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't interested in doing that. Like
Right.
my heart lies in like the tonal world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was a little bit frustrated. I didn't know like where or how to apply my music. And as much as I love Danny Elfman, I just, for some reason, film scoring never really appealed
Right.
to me. I wanted to write sort of pure concert pieces. So I did this for a while, all the way through college. By then I was able to start getting performances of my work because you're in college and there's ensembles everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to grad school and, you know, got my master's degree in theory. And then I went to a PhD program in London, Ontario for music theory and composition. And I was there for 3 years at University of Western Ontario. And at the time I was doing sessions at GCR Audio.
Okay.
Which of course owned by Robbie Takeack
Right.
of the Goo Goo Dolls. And one day he heard a playback of one of my string orchestrations for this band that I had been working with. And I don't know, it just galvanized him. He contacted me the next day and he said, I've never heard anything like this before. We've worked with everyone, you know, all over the world. And I can tell you just think differently about this. Would you like to, you know, work here and, you know, really build something up here? We can become kind of like the preeminent string center.
Right.
And I remember him saying that to me, you know, I was like 27, you know, when he said this to me. And I was just coming off a pretty bad drug problem. You know, so at that point I was in recovery. And it just kind of confirmed something for me that like I had always wondered about. I always wondered, like, you know, just how good is my stuff? Is it really worth my while? And then you get this validation from this guy who's like seen it all.
Right.
And it changed my life in that one moment. So my mom sat me down when she found out about this conversation and she was like, honey, you've been in school now for like 9 years. This opportunity comes along once in a lifetime.
Right.
If you're lucky, you need to pursue this. You can move home. You can, you know, it's going to be a different kind of life you're going to lead. I understand that. Your father understands that. But you need to do this. And so I did. I resigned my position at the university. And I started doing orchestrations out of the studio. I had a string ensemble that I worked with exclusively. Gretchen, Kirsten, and Claire Fisher, and Katie Wiseman on cello. And we would, you know, bands would approach us and they would ask us to put strings to their songs. Okay. And so I would listen to the song and I don't know, it just came to me like a bolt of lightning. And so my career took this hard right turn into rock music. Right. Which I never anticipated in a million years, even though I loved rock and, you know, it just, that's not the genre I ever thought I would be working in or the capacity I thought I would be working in. And what I really wanted though was a Goo Goo Dolls album. That's the project that I really wanted. I'm like, I'm here in their studio. Right. I'm one half of the band hired me to do this. I want to work on one of their projects. And Robbie had written this song called Happiest of Days. It was on the album Magnetic, which came out in 2013. Right. Yep. And he went out of town to work on this album. And I grabbed my partner, Justin Rose. Okay. Yep. Who's done almost every session I've ever been part of. Right. He's just a genius. And I grabbed him by the lapels and I was like, Justin, load up the song and I'm going to write strings for this. And we're going to bring in the girls and we're going to do this, and it's going to be waiting for Robbie when he gets back.
Okay.
And if he loves it, great. If he doesn't, we took our shot.
Right.
And he got back, and we had layered the girls into a full-fledged string orchestra. At least 20 strings playing, you know, out of these 4 girls. They did it in less than 2 hours. Just unbelievable. And Robbie was like shocked by what he heard. He brought it to New York City with him. He played it for their producer, a guy named Greg Wattenberg. And he told me the story. He said that he walked in behind Greg, and Greg was playing with the faders, just listening to the strings over and over, and said to him, like, there's not a single intonation problem on this. Not one. And strings are never in tune.
Right.
Ever. I mean, like, these people hire, you know, 20-piece string orchestras and have them record at Abbey Road.
Right. Okay.
And there are still intonation problems.
Right.
These girls just nailed the score perfectly. And so it wound up on the album, and then Robbie asked me to play piano on the song too.
Okay. Oh, nice.
And so that was my first, like, big credit that I got. That album did really well. And it came out of, you know, going for broke. Right. Like, that's what you kind of have to do. Yeah. You know, it could have been that Robbie would have gotten really angry, you know, because we hijacked his song without his permission. But I wouldn't have been able to live with myself if I hadn't taken that shot, you know? Yeah.
That's it. You got to take it, right? I mean,
and then the floodgates open from there. That's when things really kind of started getting crazy. It was around 2013.
Yeah. I have that record. And ironically, that record was, my wife and I got married, I think 2014, that next summer. And she's like, I want to have either this one song, I can't remember.
Was it Come to Me?
I think it was that and another one from a different band, which we picked that. I wanted the one from the Goos, and she's like, no. It was like Birds of a Feather was the theme, and I said, well, why did you give me an option to pick the one I wanted? But I wanted the one off Magnetic. I do like that record. So.
Yeah, a lot of people have walked down the aisle to that now.
Yeah,
that's like a new classic wedding song.
Yeah,
that album really shook things up for them. I was really proud of the guys for that.
Yeah, although I'm sorry, Robbie, it didn't win for us. But hey, you know, what are you gonna do? No, that's wild. I mean, that really is wild. So now, do you play like with a band at all, or are you just kind of doing like separate projects?
No, this is an interesting question. I'm like a lone wolf, and it's hard because I work with bands, like, you know, bands and artists hire me to do these projects, and especially if it's like an album that you're working on, the process is really intensive. You know, you're kind of adopted you're like the foster child of this family, right? You're adopted into it, and you have this camaraderie that, you know, you didn't really know you were missing. And then the project wraps up and the album is ready for release, and everyone kind of goes their separate ways, and they're like, okay, so thanks, you know, for your services, and we'll see you later. And it's just like, wait a minute, you know, everything comes to this screeching halt, and it gets a little lonely. Yeah. You know, you kind of don't realize when you do the type of thing that I do, especially as a classical musician, you know, who's like trained to handle all the different parts of this. Like, I don't have, besides Justin and the girls who play the stuff, I don't have anybody helping me write it. Okay. Like, I'm doing the orchestration, I'm doing the composition, I'm, you know, inputting everything. A guy like Danny Elfman has, like, you know, this wonderful team of people. And so I don't really realize how kind of starved for that collaborative spirit that I am until I'm working within that framework. Sure. So it causes me to like gun for projects as often as I can. Like, you really have to sort of hustle.
Yeah, it equates that I've done theater in the past, and it's the same thing. You work with a whole group of people for 6 weeks. You do your show, and then closing night comes. You strike the set, and you're done.
Yeah, I imagine that would be
Yeah,
depressing.
yeah. It's like- the very first show I did. I took opening night off from work, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's nice, but you're gonna want to take the day after we close off." I'm
Mhm.
like, "Why?" They're like, "You'll find out. We can't explain it." And it was. It's like this, like a postpartum depression kind of a thing,
Yeah,
because you're on such a high, and then all of a sudden, the next day, you're like, "I don't have to go to rehearsal."
and it's like a
There's,
cliff
yeah,
too.
it is.
There's nothing gradual about it.
Mm-hmm.
1 minute you're on, the next minute you're off,
Yeah,
and
and
there's
that energy and the adrenaline and everything that goes with it, and then all of a sudden, boom.
yeah, it's like, what do you do with all of it?
Yeah,
That's just sitting there, like,
yeah.
and that's a problem that I've like always struggled with.
Mm-hmm.
Like I look at my brother's band, Grosh,
Mm-hmm.
who are just fabulous, and I look at the camaraderie that they have. And
Right.
I've worked with Grosh, I think on each of their albums. I've done several orchestrations now,
Okay.
and it just seems like such a wonderful thing
Mm-hmm.
that they have, that like this synergy.
Yeah.
But I'm not in a band. The closest thing that I am to having like a band experience is I play in a group called Stoneflower with Gino McManus.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And Frank, right?
Yeah, Frank
Yeah.
Grisanti and and those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't played with them in a while, but we're playing a show April 11th. It's all Bowie.
Mm.
And Bowie for pianists is like just a wonderful experience,
Right.
because his music is so pianistic. He always
Mm-hmm.
got all the best pianists,
Yeah.
Rick Wakeman, Mike Garson, and so Gino is like fantastic at putting this together. He's just like a conductor,
Mm-hmm.
and it's wonderful to go to like a rehearsal,
Sure.
as basic as it sounds, like
Yeah.
to go to a rehearsal, to play alongside all these people, because as a performer, I'm a soloist.
Mm-hmm.
It's me on that stage alone
Right.
as a pianist, and so there is an element of like loneliness to
Mhm.
the whole thing. There's also an element of being a control freak as well.
Yeah.
Like I'm not used to having to not kowtow. That's not the term I'm looking for. To accede
Mm-hmm.
to other instruments, or I do it, of course, because I
Mhm.
understand how to function in an ensemble, but like
Sure.
there's always part of me that's kind of like growling on the inside. It's just
Mhm.
like, why can't I solo for this entire thing? So it's an interesting dynamic, from being a dedicated soloist to then playing alongside all these musicians. I would say, if I had a preference, I prefer playing with other musicians.
Mm-hmm. Now, kind of jumping into a different direction. So, how did you get connected with WNED?
WNED. Well, it's now they've had a name change.
Yeah.
It's now BTPM Classical. I'm still getting used to it myself.
Right. Yeah.
We all are.
Yeah.
Buffalo Toronto
Plug.
Public Media.
Yep.
That connection happened. Again, that was my mother,
Mm.
who saw an advertisement around 2017 looking for a radio host for the
Mhm.
classical station.
Okay.
And without even consulting me, just threw my name in the hat.
Right.
And so I had a meeting with the great Stratton Rawson,
Mm-hmm.
the grand man of the station,
Yeah.
a person that knows more about, or has forgotten more about, classical music than I know.
Mm-hmm.
And he called me in, and we did an interview, and he just asked what composers I liked. And I was just so excited. I started naming all these really kind of esoteric composers,
Right.
composers that nobody had really heard of unless you were really into classical music,
Yeah.
like Charles Valentin Alkan and Sigismund Thalberg, who was Liszt's rival, who's now forgotten, and Pixis, and Hensel and all, and so Stratton is sitting there, you know, listening to me rattle these names off, and is just thinking to himself, "Oh, all right, he's got a command of the repertoire.
Mm-hmm.
He has this variegated and kind of interesting background, and he decided that I had a good radio voice."
Okay.
So he, you know, it took me like a while to figure out what that meant,
Mm-hmm.
but he hired me to start being the host of a show called Evening Classics, and I worked there for about a year or so. Then we parted ways and COVID happened and all the stuff. And then on a whim in 2022, I called Stratton up. It had been a couple of years since we talked, and we started spending time together, and we came up with the idea of doing a show together, or a podcast together. And we started experimenting with this every week. I wasn't yet with the station, but then finally this idea of a show got approved by the owner, Tom Calderon.
Right.
And Entering Music was born, and straight out of the gate, this dynamic between Stratton and I, you know, this older gentleman who's, you know, really just this legendary figure in terms of, you know, his knowledge of classical music, and this young gun who's kind of a little bit brazen and, you know, comes from a pretty extensive rock background, as well as classical, of course. The dynamic between the two of us was like this electric thing. Yeah. We just went into the booth and talked and edited the episodes down to about 15, 20 minutes. And it became like this surprise hit of a show. Like, we get fan mail now. Wow. We get, you know, there's thousands of listeners. It's such a blessing. Right. It's so amazing because you forget when you're in the studio that you're all the people that you're reaching. It's really easy to lose sight of that. And Stratton's had, like, you know, years and years to like perfect his craft at it, and just sitting with him every week is like a masterclass in greatness. Right. I can't explain how much respect I have for him. So it was my mother, you know, who was the impetus for the whole thing. And it's hard for me to remember a time where I wasn't at the station. That's how integral to my life it's become now.
Oh, nice. Yeah. We need to send your mom like some flowers or something.
Oh, for
God
sure.
God bless, Mom. You know,
I know.
I mean, really. I mean, it's so refreshing and so nice to hear that. You know, you've got that she's right behind you.
Oh, she is.
Lifting you up all the time.
Always.
Yeah. Just always. I think Richie I think he'd do good at that.
Yeah. And she just throws my hat into the ring without me knowing it.
This will be good for you. Well, it's kind of like the shot you took with the Goos, though, right? It's kind of on the same level of.
Yeah,
you know, she took a shot. Yeah, you know.
It is.
If he doesn't want to do it, he doesn't want to do it. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But it's the old "you got to be in it to win it" kind of a thing.
I remember one time, like, every broadcaster's worst nightmare happened to me. Like, I overslept, and there was like dead air. Right. I had to like speed down to the station, and then Stratton was there, so he covered for me, and he was great about it. But he told me he used to have nightmares about that happening to him. But it's now things are different than they were before COVID. You know, it used to be that we were all like live on the air. And now, like our show, for instance, we have to pre-record it.
Right. Okay.
There's a lot of editing involved, and there's a lot of, and it changes the dynamic a little bit.
Right.
When you know that you can kind of go on, and that it's going to be cut down and edited into this gem. But when that little red light is on and you're live, it's like the Eye of Mordor. You know, it's just like burning through your soul.
Yeah.
So.
Now, do you and Stratton have like editorial license do you help do the editing, or do you give it to someone else and they like?
Stratton edits the dialogue.
Okay.
He loves editing. Stratton he was a screenplay writer.
Wow.
He wrote the original screenplay for Tuck Everlasting, and he worked on The Natural.
Okay. Yeah.
He was in the film business for a while, and so he loves the editing process.
So
he edits the text, and then we send it to a guy named Aaron Heffernan, who puts in the music samples. And this is kind of how I am with all the artists, that I work with, like the string quartet, the ladies that I work with, to the bands that I work with, to working with Aaron. I like to give them as much latitude as I can. I don't like to be too specific.
Right.
I like them to use their own imagination and say, what would you do here? Or with Justin Rose,
right?
Who's just the most brilliant engineer. I've deliberately kept myself ignorant of the engineering process, so that it forces me to use like metaphors. Like I'll ask Justin, for instance, like make this sound like acid rain.
Okay.
And then let him go. And so with Aaron, I'll give him now and then some general ideas of, what we're looking for, but the conversation that Stratton and I are having guides him. So we just did an episode about Danny Elfman.
Right.
And it's being edited right now.
Okay.
And I'm so excited to hear like what Aaron does with it. He creates these sound collages, like backing us. It's just, it's an amazing thing. I would love to get involved in the editing process, but Stratton is so good at it that I don't want to interfere.
Yeah. Now, were you able to get Danny Elfman to be part of that conversation, or?
No, Shred and Reagan got to him.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. Good for them, but I got to meet him backstage.
There you go. Yeah.
He was everything that I hoped it was everything I hoped it would be to meet him. He was just such a charming guy. He was, so magnanimous. He met my wife and I, Joanne Folletta, who was just the most wonderful person.
Yeah.
Just so graciously brought us back and told him that, we were, Stratton and I were hosting the show, and we had done an episode about him, and he said he's interested to hear it.
Okay.
And, so that's another reason that I can't wait to hear this episode.
Right.
Is on the off chance that Danny Elfman gets to listen to it.
Yeah.
I can't wrap my head around that. I still can't wrap my head around meeting him.
Right. It's cool when you meet folks that you really admire, musically.
It is. It's a little bit scary too.
Yeah.
Like I remember the first time that really happened to me was with Denny Laine, who I wound up working with for 2 years, and we became great friends. But I remember thinking to myself, if this guy is a jerk, it's going to ruin my whole experience of like the formative band that I listened to. Like the Moody Blues were like everything to me,
right?
As a songwriter. And I like Denny Laine was so impactful that I remember thinking to myself, if I got a chance to meet Paul McCartney, I would almost be more excited about possibly meeting Denny Laine.
Wow.
Like no disrespect to Paul, but Denny was the one that, it was his song Go Now that got me to be a songwriter.
Right.
But I remember walking into that meeting, and Armin Petrie was there.
Okay.
And he introduced us, and Denny, it was after his concert at Sportsman's. And how did it happen? We were talking, and it turned out that he had this piece that he'd been working on for decades called Arctic Song. He had written a song on tour in like every country they stopped at, really kind of, like very ethnic influenced songs, from every culture that he experienced. And he wanted to fuse it into this magnum opus. And originally he contacted Nicky Hopkins to orchestrate it, but that didn't work out. Then John Paul Jones, but that didn't work out.
Right.
So he shelved it. So I don't know what came over me, but I looked him in the eye and I said, Denny, I will orchestrate every single song on this in 2 weeks if you give me a shot. And I remember thinking to myself, oh shit. But I looked him in the eye. We locked eyes, and he said, okay, here's my email address. Let's see what you've got. And I stayed up night after night after night orchestrating this stuff for him. And he heard it, and he absolutely loved it. And I remember he said that you've captured I remember it verbatim. Mm-hmm. He told me that I had captured his thoughts and feelings for the project exactly, and that he had said, you are a great talent, and it's a pleasure to have gotten to know you like this.
Wow.
And again, I took a risk.
Yeah.
He could have I mean, if John Paul Jones was the last guy that didn't work out for you, why should he take on Richie English?
Exactly. Yeah.
But he did. He just kind of saw something. But I told him, I was like, I know your music inside out. And that was the truth.
Right.
And so that was my first time meeting a hero. And I was worried. I was worried that they would be a jerk.
Right. Yeah. No, that's...
Have you gotten a chance to meet your heroes?
Yes, Brian Setzer is my guitar hero. I've got a picture over there on the wall. Yeah, it's like
What was that like?
Oh, it was my first wife's brother-in-law worked for Atlantic Records at the time, and of course they Surf Dog Records, which is Brian's label, is one of the independent labels there. So he had worked with their team. And so the orchestra was playing a show in New York, and I used to call on New York all the time for business. So he says, come on down. Well, I'll grab some tickets for the show. And he had a couple other tickets. So I invited a client of mine, and he had a friend of his, and we were having some drinks it was at the Hammerstein Ballroom. They were doing the show. And in walks this guy. And Adam says, I'd like to introduce you to Dave Kaplan. I said, from Surf Dog Records? He says, yeah. He says, and at the time, there was this woman from Ireland named Imelda May, who was great rockabilly vocalist. She's since moved into some other different genres. Jules, she does stuff with Jules Holland now all the time. And I said, is Imelda May opening for Brian tonight? He says, no. He says, oh, you know about that? I says, oh yeah, I signed the petition. Turns out that both Brian and Jeff Beck were fighting over who gets to have her go on tour with them, and Jeff Beck won. So I don't know who opened, but he said, okay. He says, I got to go back to Hammerstein. We're doing these backstage tour, VIP tours. So of course I'm trying to be all smooth and cool and everything. And about 10 minutes later, Adam gets a call, and he says, okay. He says, all right. He says, we got a couple options here. We got time for another round of beer, or we can go over to Hammerstein and we can do the backstage tour. And I said, give me the check. And we went over, and it was before a show, which was really, to me, interesting because, you're getting into show mode right before you go on stage. And we got backstage, and they showed us his guitars, and then met him, and he was the nicest guy. And was very gracious, met his wife and all the band, everyone from the band, and they were all like, eh. And I was just, I don't even remember the show, to be honest with you. I was just on cloud nine. I've seen him a ton of times, but that one time, and you're the same thing. It's like, boy, I hope he's not a jerk,
Right.
And especially before a show, because I've told this story 1,000 times where, I got to meet Harry Connick Jr., and he was getting kind of harassed during the show, and my ex-wife and I were doing a meet and greet, and he was just not having it, and if you want to hear the show, go back to some other episodes, because I got the full story there. But
yeah, I'm gonna have to do that.
Yeah, but I was able to kind of get a smile out of him. So I mean, real quickly, he was just kind of like, it was soup Nazi. He would sign something and they'd whisk out a door, and we had paid money to meet him. It was going to the Save the Music Foundation for VH1, and he was really pissed, and because this one woman kept yelling out "Leo, Leo" during the show, because that's when he was on Will and Grace. He was playing Grace's husband, and he's like, first he's like, yeah, I played Leo, and she kept doing it the whole show, and it just pissed him off, and so So I walk up to him. I'm like, damn it, I just paid $130 to meet this guy. So I put my hand on his shoulder, and he looks up, and I says, Harry, I just want to let you know, because of you, I'm getting lucky tonight. And he says, he smiled big from ear to ear. He goes, glad I could help out. So I got a story for $130, but yeah, so that was kind of a nice thing. But yeah, meeting Brian was just incredible.
Man, talk about a hell of a pianist, though, with Harry Connick Jr.
Yeah.
Boy, that guy is so underrated.
And the thing with him is, you talk about, he wasn't there for himself. He wasn't grandstanding. He was a true jazz musician. They were all collaborating. They were all playing the music, and he's just like, shut up, because we're playing music here. So that's what people came to hear me play music. So, I think that was the thing that pissed him off the most. But yeah, he was dynamite. I've seen him a couple times, and well, I saw him and the Setzer Orchestra back to back at Darien Lake within like 2 weeks of each other, and and then I got a picture of Brian from Darien Lake that Bob Mussel gave me.
Oh, Bob, what a great photographer!
Yeah, and we were when I was with the Hall of Fame, we had an event. We called it the Mine, the Music Industry Networking event. It was at GCR Audio, and Bob kind of had a little show of all his photos, in the studio at the time for the event. And I asked him, I says, hey, have you ever taken, any shots of Brian Setzer? He says, I think so. And I was, went about doing my thing and meeting and greeting everybody. And at the end, he says, hey, come downstairs. I got something for you. And he gives me that photo. He says, yeah, this was taken at Darien Lake, 1999. I said, I was at that show. And he says, just do me one favor. I don't want to see this on eBay. I said, are you kidding me? That's not going anywhere except for on my wall. And that's been there ever since. So.
Have you seen him with Stray Cats?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Saw him 2 years ago. I've seen him twice. Saw him at Jones Beach, opening for the Pretenders and for ZZ Top. They were the opener.
That's shocking to me.
They played a half an hour, and everybody, and of course they're from Long Island, so everyone's like, they wanted more. It's like, yeah, they were killing it. I mean, the sound they get out of those three pieces.
Was it just Slim Jim Phantom and Lee Rocker and Brian?
Just the three of them.
Yeah.
Cocktail kit, an electric guitar, and an upright bass. That was it. No special pedals, no. And I saw him. I was fortunate to see him at Art Park a couple years ago, and I've seen him with his orchestra. I've seen him he does a thing called the Rockabilly Riot, where he's got like a 6-piece, and a couple different guys on bass and keyboard. This guy, Kevin McKendry, he's a great rockabilly pianist. Man, he can play that stuff like no one's business. And we were supposed to see him at Turning Stone this past November, but he got ill somehow and he had to cancel the tour. And as we're recording today, they just announced another tour this summer, but he's not coming anywhere close. About 3.5 miles or 3.5 hours, maybe 4 hours in Ohio is about the closest. But I'm like, I got to see him, so.
Yeah.
But I would love to see him again if they get a little closer. But yeah, those guys can. It's amazing how they could just get such a big sound out of three kind of basic instruments.
Yeah, it's the trio format for you.
Yeah.
It like breeds ingenuity.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you only have three instruments, you have to like think in a multiplicity of different timbres and different, sonic gradients and everything. And it maximizes your playing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In a way that other ensembles don't.
Right. And again, I've seen him with the orchestra, and he's always got a multitude of guitars and, probably different tunings and, drop Ds and all that kind of stuff. With the Cats, he played one guitar the whole show. He never stopped to do it. He just played that sucker the whole time. And I'm like, man, that's something else, and that's the fun part for me too. So, well, Richie, we've gone over an hour already, so it goes quick because I want to take a little time here before we cut off, because I talked to you beforehand. We're going to leave everybody with a little bit of your music.
Oh, wonderful.
So explain the piece that we're gonna end the show with.
So I got the great opportunity to work with a singer named John Risen. And John Risen was a grand finalist in America's Got Talent. He went on as an opera singer. He's just the most fabulous opera singer. And we got to talking. He's a neighbor of mine. He lives, very close. And that was sort of unbelievable to the both of us. And he wanted a vehicle to really showcase his range, that was like a classical crossover piece of music, one where he didn't have to hide, where people didn't tell him it sounds too much like opera.
Right.
But he wanted it to also have this crossover appeal. And so my wife is my biggest inspiration. And I decided I'm going to write her the grandest love song that I can possibly write. And the song is called Singularity. And it was written for Amanda, my wife, or about Amanda, for John's voice. And it's one of these things where every time I listen to it, I think to myself, like, geez, I can't believe that I was lucky enough to write this. Just for me, it's like one of my favorite things that I've ever gotten to write. And the song wound up on 12 different Pandora stations. It was streamed, thousands and thousands of times. We were very fortunate, and I just love the piece of music, and I hope that all of you will too.
Right. Well, Richie, I can't thank you enough for coming down here.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure.
It's been great. And for everyone who's tuned in, we hope you had just as much fun as we have. And as always, you can find the podcast where you get your podcasts at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Audible, thebuffalohive.com, YouTube, and of course, you can always find them at rockabillygreg.com, where it's all about the music. And I'll have some extra goodies at the website about Richie, and websites and social media, and maybe some YouTube videos and some extra stuff there where you can find out what he's up to and what he's playing on next. And I'm kind of your stories have been great. I just love hearing it, and I can't thank you enough for coming down. And,
hey, likewise. Yeah. Thank you so much.
So again, before we tune off, the name of the song that we're going to listen to is
Singularity
by Richie English. We'll see you later. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Somewhere across the vastness, in the limitless expanses, starbursts of past romances burn out for eternity. I drifted alone, a heart with a home. For some of us, love is a forbidden zone. We can't seem to reach our own, like we were born to be unworthy. All at once, a pulse of light cuts right through the endless night. And it's frightening when her light has found you.
In the Flamingo Lounge is made possible in part by CatsLikeUs.com, your online store for authentic vintage clothing and accessories. Buffalo Ironworks, an intimate live music venue and bar located in the Cobblestone District in downtown Buffalo. And by Diamond Hawk Golf Course and Pub, Western New York's premier golf course, restaurant, and banquet facility. At the Hawk, the bar is hopping year-round with live music every Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, and some other nights, too. Tune in for a new episode every Saturday at 9 a.m. EST at rockabillygreg.com, where it's all about the music. Bark, Zoe, bark. Good girl.